Psalm 90 verse 10 and the rapture. The rapture has always been associated with Psalm 90 verse 10 because it defines the length of a generation. But not everyone who studies this verse appreciates just how much Psalm 90 verse 10 relates in a unique way to the rapture. The days of our lives are 70 years. And if by reason of strength they are 80 years. Yet their boast is only labor and sorrow. For it is soon cut off, and we fly away. First of all, a little background to what the length of a generation has to do with the rapture. Jesus speaks of a generation in Matthew 24 verses 32 to 36, which will not pass away until all these things take place. It has been speculated that this generation began on May 14, 1948, when the nation of Israel, symbolized by a fig tree, came back into their land and formed a new nation-state. Jesus was speaking to his disciples, who had just asked him a direct question, "What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And Jesus answered the question by speaking about a time in the future when the kingdom of God was about to be established, a kingdom in which the king will be Jesus Christ, and his kingdom will be based in Israel. The generation that was alive when Jesus last walked the earth was not the generation that would see the rapture. Rather, there would be a hiatus of 2,000 years after which Jesus would return at the time of the rapture to receive his bride, the church, to himself in his Father's house, in preparation for returning to the earth 7 years later to establish the millennial kingdom. So what is so unique about Psalm 90 verse 10? Here's the thing: most people just read the first half of the verse, which speaks of 70 to 80 years, and just gloss over the second half of the verse, which refers to a boast which is cut off, after which we fly away. The way I interpret this is by looking at the way most people who don't even think about the rapture interpret this verse. Most people see this as a verse about growing old and passing away. An old person, over the age of 70, can be relatively healthy one day, and then as a result of a serious setback such as a fall or the onset of a serious disease, can lose their quality of life, or even eventually their life, in a very short period of time. So what does this all have to do with the rapture? According to Matthew 24, the generation currently living in Israel is destined to be the generation that will see the kingdom of God established in their lifetime. But before that transition from the church age to the kingdom of God can happen, there needs to be a serious setback that cuts off the generation and sets it on the road to passing away, in the sense that this generation of people can no longer live as a self-supporting nation-state living in their land, because a serious setback is about to happen that makes that no longer possible. I believe that we are seeing the precursor of this setback right now, as Russia, the nation that was prophesied to invade the land of Israel in Ezekiel 38, has just invaded Ukraine, a nation to the north of Turkey, which in turn borders Syria, the nation just north of Israel. If Russia defeats Ukraine, Russia might then be emboldened to invade Israel. So why do I think that this serious setback might happen in 2022? Because of another fig tree parable that is recorded in Luke 13 verses 6 to 9. He also spoke this parable: a certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came seeking fruit on it and found none. Then he said to the keeper of his vineyard, "Look, for 3 years I have come seeking fruit on this fig tree and find none. Cut it down, why does it use up the ground?" But he answered and said to him, "Sir, let it alone this year also, until I dig around it and fertilize it. And if it bears fruit, well. But if not, after that you can cut it down." This passage speaks of a 4-year period after which a fig tree is cut down if it does not bear fruit. There is a testing period of 4 years, which tests the boast in Psalm 90 verse 10, of being able to live to 80 years after reaching the age of 70. Israel as a nation reached the age of 70 in 2018 and gained the recognition of their eternal capital in Jerusalem and their sovereignty over the Golan Heights and the West Bank. But then things changed in the world. There was a change in the US presidency to one that does not favor Israel as the former president did, followed by the end of Benjamin Netanyahu's long-running government in Israel, replaced by a weak coalition of 8 factions which could fall apart at any time. This all happened in the last 3 years, and now we are in the 4th and final year leading up to Israel's 74th anniversary on May 14, 2022. Could the rapture happen then? We can only watch and wait to see if it happens. Please add your comments and like and subscribe to see more content like this, and see you on the other side if the Lord doesn't tarry.